Hello viewers, welcome to this film program on production planning and control. Human life is dependent on some basic needs and a few extra things. To satisfy our needs, we utilize some products which are sold in the market. In business and industry, the products are produced depending upon the needs of the customers and production procedure. Production procedure is based on planning and control. Planning contains a well thought out idea on production, and while control contains quality, development, etc., which help us in increasing productivity and reducing the cost. This film contains two parts. The first part explains production planning and the second part explains control. In part 1 of the film, we will learn production planning. Now, let us watch the film.
In this particular session, I will be discussing production and planning and control related to small industry. Now, once you have done the market survey and you have found out the requirement of the market, then you set your targets for the products. And in order to produce those goods, you require certain machineries, you require land and building, you have to procure some raw material, you have to have some trained manpower, and all these resources, are to be put in such a way that you are able to process the raw material and turn it into the finished goods. Now, all these things have to be done in advance. That's why, planning is required, because all the resources in terms of material, man, land and building, machines and equipment, they are not required simultaneously. So, you have to procure the thing when it is needed. Then which machine is to be used, their sequencing, their loading, their scheduling, all these things have to be planned in detail. And why you require this planning? Because in order to be competitive in the market, there has to be optimum utilization of man, material and machineries. And in order to have optimum utilization, there has to be proper loading on machineries, on people you are hiring, and for that planning is very, very essential. So, here in production planning and control, we take up various factors, which helps us in increasing the productivity and reducing the cost. And simultaneously, we are able to produce quality products. Now, we will see what are the things, we will be discussing under production planning and control. Now, you see here, first thing is the need for production planning and control. Then second, functions of production planning and control, and first function is routing. Then we will be discussing estimating. Number 2 is estimating, number 3 is scheduling, number 4th is loading, and number 5th is dispatching. Then we will be discussing in detail the forecasting, techniques for forecasting, and under different techniques, central tendency, last uses and moving average. Now, these factors we will be discussing. Then we will come to material control, and under material control, stock holding, stock reduction, stock replenishment and control system. So, this will be in relation to material control, then batch control, production control, and under production control we will also be discussing types of production control. And under various types, order control, then flow control or rate control, block control, load control, and spatial project control. So, these various aspects, I will be discussing with you under production planning and control. Now, let us first come to need for production planning and control. Now, anything you want to do, planning is very essential. Resources are very limited, and when scarce resources are there, then their optimum utilization is a must. And in order to have optimum utilization of resources, we have to think in terms of the requirement of land and building. Say if you want to make certain goods, then what is the minimum requirement of land and building for having that kind of production? Because if we are having excess requirement, then it is adding to the cost, and ultimately that cost will get transferred to your final product, and your product will not be competitive in the market. Because when your product compares with somebody else, and if he is doing the things more efficiently, then his quality may be better, his cost may be less, and your product may not be able to sell in the market. So, right from beginning you have to see in terms of utilization of resources. Whatever resource you are putting in the enterprise, you have to do the cost benefit analysis. How much I am spending and what return I will be getting in the process. And if you plan that way, then and then only ultimately you will be able to produce the goods at a lesser cost and of a better quality. So, here you need to find out the requirement of land and building, you have to find out what machineries and equipments are required, and then there are specifications. If you have to make a quality good, then for example lathe machine, wide variety of lathe machines are available in the market, and their price also varies from a very low to a very high price. Now, when you want to make a particular product, then what are the specifications, what are the tolerance limit, what are the finishes you require? If you have an idea about all these factors, then you will choose a particular plant and equipment which can produce that particular product. So, selection of plant and machinery, and then putting your particular job on particular machineries, all those things have to be planned in advance. And it is not only plant and machinery, but you have to think in terms of what jigs and fixtures are required. You know that if you are using jigs and fixture, then rate of production can be increased. Quality of the products can also be increased. Their interchangeability and other things, they are much better when you are using jigs and fixture. Now, say instead of jigs and fixture, you would like to go for automation. You are feeding raw material at one place, and then you are putting your different work centers in such a way that they are continuously processed, and then ultimately your final product comes out. In that case, your inventory will be less, and your output will be considerably increased, and quality of good will be still better if you are using better quality of machineries. So, here it all depends upon what is a product and what kind of machineries you are having. So, sometimes you may be required to have a continuous production and you are having automated machineries and equipment. But for certain products you do not require the product in large quantity, but you require only few numbers. When you require only few numbers, then probably you have to go for batch production. And in batch production, you know, you are not going to go for automated machinery, but you will go for general purpose machinery in which, you know, you will do the setting as per the batch requirement. So here, you know, you have to take a decision what kind of production you have to have. Is it batch production? Is it continuous production? So, you know, all those things, they require planning. And for planning, you know, the complete knowledge about the raw material, the processes, the machineries, speeds and feeds, cooling and other requirements, you know, is to be known to the person who is doing planning. After all, when a product is to be made, then process planning is very important. And for process planning, same product can be made by alternative ways. Now, which method is most suitable for a given product for your enterprise, that can be judged by a person when he is having complete knowledge about plant and equipment, about processes, about raw material, about tools, jigs and fixtures and other related aspects. So, here, you know, you see that when you want to produce goods, advanced planning is very, very essential. Once we have seen the need for planning, then next question comes, you know, what is the necessity for control? And many a times it so happens that you have done excellent planning, but when you are actually producing the goods, then actual implementation may be at a variance from your planning, and the goods coming out, you know, they may not be according to your plan. So, there, you know, if you are having some control system, so that, you know, monitoring and other, you know, whatever instructions are going, based on that you are monitoring and you are trying to see that things are going as planned. And this should be in terms of quantity, quality, time schedule. Because when we have taken the market requirement, then, you know, some customers, they want certain quantity of product at a particular time. Say you are having an industry which is manufacturing ancillary items for, say, Punjab Tractor or, say, Maruti Udyog Limited. Now, if you are manufacturing a silencer or if you are manufacturing some other component for a car, then ultimately it has to be delivered to Maruti Udyog on a particular date, so that, you know, it can go to the assembly. So, here, you know, the time of delivery is very, very important. In India, because, you know, some of our systems like transportation, your raw material supply, your workers and all that thing, if there is a slack in any one of them, then, you know, whatever target dates you have fixed for completing the task, you know, you are not able to complete it, production is delayed, and then, you know, you have all the problems when you supply to your parent company. So, there, you know, you have to keep some margin also, so that, you know, for unforeseen delays you can take some contingency plan, and at least you are able to supply the goods which you have committed to a given company if it is very, very critical. So, here, you know, control function is equally important as the planning function. So, there is a need for production planning and control. Now, after having understood the need for production planning and control, then next, you know, we go to function of production planning and control. After all, you know, what comes under planning? Now, the first thing which we will be discussing is routing. Now, when goods are to be produced, then there is some raw material and it has to be converted into finished good. So, it will be following certain route. It may be going to various machineries. For example, first turning is there, then drilling is there, then some milling operation is there, then some components are to be assembled, final testing is there. So, certain route is there which has to be followed by a particular item, so that you know from raw material it is converted into the finished product. So, here you know we have to decide the routing for each and every item you know which is to be produced. Similarly, you know your other equipments and machineries, they have to be, you know, if some movement is required, there are certain productions in which you know the machinery may be shifting and you know your things are fixed. For example, laying of a road. Now, road is stationary, but your road roller and other things which are doing the compaction, they are moving. So, here you know it may be routing of material, it may be routing of machinery, it may be routing of you know tools and equipment, whatever is required you know it has to be supplied to a particular place at a right time. So, that you know the entire process planning for producing the goods is done, and once the total process planning has been done, you know there may be number of goods, and for producing those number of goods there may be number of machineries. You have made some layout for your machinery which is known as plant layout. Now, once you have done that thing, then you know you have to decide the routing, and sometimes even plant and layout may be changed you know in order to have better routing, because more the travel of raw material, more the motion involved of man, machinery and material, greater will be the cost. So, you have to minimize the handling of material, man and machinery. And in order to do that kind of a thing, there may be iterative process in which you know sometimes you may be altering your layout, sometimes you are changing your routing, and when you come to an optimum, then you start producing that kind of thing. And then you know when market requirement changes, and suppose you want to add up some new product. Now, in order to produce those new items, you may require one or two additional machinery. So, they are to be added and then routing have to be rescheduled. So, then again you know it may require a change. So, here you know it is not a one shot affair. As the production targets are changing, as you are adding or deleting the items from your production targets, accordingly you know your routing may change. So, you know this planning you have to do. Then after routing you know comes estimating. Now, when you want to produce certain quantity of good, then for that you have to estimate what is the quantity of raw material required. After all, you have to procure the raw material. So, you can procure it only when you know the requirement of the raw material. Now, if a machinery is there, what should be the specification of the machinery, and once the speed and feeds are known, you have to estimate how much time it will take in order to complete a process. You know, for optimum loading of the machinery, if you know the time taken for doing a particular task, then and then only you know you will be able to load the machinery optimally. Similarly, if you know the output of the worker, if a particular task you know how much time he will take for completing that task, then and then only you can fix up the job responsibility to different workers. So, here you know in estimating the time requirement, and there, the man hour, machine hour, those are to be calculated. And then, we can also find out the rates. After all, the cost of the total machinery is known. So, we can find out per hour, what is the rate for turning, what is the rate for milling, what is the rate for drilling. So that, when we are producing our goods, then ultimately we have to estimate the cost also. And it is not only the cost of the final product, but cost of individual components. And if you are having a product mix, then what is the cost of each product? Because for fixing the selling price, we must know what is our cost. And if we do not know the cost accurately, many a times in our product mix, some products may be making very good profit, other products we may be incurring losses. And unless and until we know which products are giving good profit, which products are making losses, we will not be able to take any corrective action. Overall company may be in profit, but there may be some line of product which are not economical to produce. And if we know that kind of a thing, then we can alter our production mix, we can change the quantities of the items made, those which are making more profit, that can be increased. Those which are making losses, we can analyze why they are making losses. There may be a scope for improvement in some of the processes. So, there we can take some corrective actions. So, that is possible only if we know how to estimate the thing. And here estimation of quantity, estimation of quality, estimation of time, estimation of cost, all these things are involved. So, this is what is meant by estimating. You have to estimate the things, and this is a part of a production plan. Then next thing we will be discussing is scheduling. Now, this scheduling, you are manufacturing number of items in a particular unit. Now, you have to prepare a total timetable, how your material is moving, when a particular machine is to be loaded, when a particular operator has to work on a particular machine, when he has to shift to some other machine. All those kind of things, have to be worked out in detail. And those kind of detailing is possible if schedule has been worked out. That means in which you know the sequence. First will be this operation, after that this is a second operation, then this is third operation. And if you know the time and all that thing, then you know exactly when a particular operation will start and when it will finish.
On that basis we can set the targets also.
Yeah. So, here well, some of the things are interrelated also. So, here under scheduling you have to prepare the schedule for all these things. And these schedules are actually given to the people who are there on the shop floor for producing the goods, so that everybody knows when I have to make what items, when it will be coming to me, when I have to complete it and all that thing. So, those targets are given in advance and they have tried to adhere to those kind of targets. Suppose 50 items are to be completed, then naturally individual components also to be completed at certain point of time. So, once the schedules are prepared, then everybody knows how it should proceed. Then comes the loading. Now, here we consider say different machineries are there in your unit. There is a lathe machine, there is a drilling machine, there is a milling machine, their cost may be different. Depending upon what job you are manufacturing, they have to be put on certain machines. And once you have done this routing, scheduling, estimating and all that thing, then you know that kind of planning is possible. And after you have done that kind of a plan, then you can find out, you know, what is the loading on each and every machine. Suppose it is 8 hour of shift, then out of 8 hours, suppose a machine, lathe machine, it is loaded for 8 hours and 30 minutes. Milling machine, it is loaded only for 6 hours. Drilling machines, loading comes 10 hours. Now, like that, you know, for each and every machine, you have to find out what will be the loading. And there, you know, you have to see that your plant and equipment is optimally utilized. Say machines which are very costly, we should be very careful in utilization of those machineries. Say there is a numerical control machine, it is costing 10 lakhs rupees, and that is a one machine, and another 8 machines are your conventional lathe, drilling, milling and all that thing, and all remaining machines cost only 3-4 lakhs rupees. Then it will be more important to see that loading is more appropriate for your numerical control machine, because machine hour rates are very high, and if there is a idle capacity on that particular machine, it will affect your overall profitability of the unit. So, you have to load each and every machine adequately, but you have to be more careful about those machines which are costly. And many a times, you know, when you find that after all iteration, you know, you are changing your routes, you are changing your schedules, you are changing your product mix and all that thing, and in spite of that you find that your costly machine is not optimally loaded. Then next important function under production planning and control is dispatching. And dispatching is, you know, that you are giving an order to a particular operator to execute the production process. You know, when you have placed the order, then and then only then that item will be produced on a particular machine. So, in dispatching, you know, which operator has to start, you know, producing which item, all those things, you know, in order form they are given, and the operator knows in advance today, you know, in 8 hours what exactly he has to do. The next day what he has to do. If the master schedule is available, then even for coming days or even for months, you know, he knows what exactly he is required to do. But in certain cases, you know, when master schedule is not prepared and it is only day to day schedule is given, then only you are knowing the daily requirement. So, here, you know, that thing comes under your dispatching. Next is, you know, forecasting. Now, here, you know, you have to make a forecast for items, you know, which you want to produce. Say, when you are doing market assessment, you have to forecast how many items are required in the market. And generally, for forecasting, you know, you can utilize your past data. For example, for last 6 months or 1 year, you are producing the items in certain quantities of certain quality and all that thing, and probably this production is going up. Now, when you are planning for the future, then if you know the trend of growth and other things, based on that you can do future projection also. You know, the demand is not constant. If it is a constant, then forecasting is no problem. If there is a constant demand, then it is a continuous production, and forecasting is much easier. Whatever you have produced this year, next year also your plant and equipment will be producing same thing. Of course, little variation may be there. But if your market demand is changing, and based on that your items which you are manufacturing, they also vary, then when you are planning for the next year, then based on the past data you have to forecast how much should I produce each month next year. And that kind of forecasting is required, so that there are certain things which are required seasonally. And if you start manufacturing only seasonally, then what will happen? There is a huge requirement of manpower during the peak period, and then there is no requirement. And in order to run the industry, generally you would like to retain the people throughout the year. So you are making your production schedule in such a way that things are produced over the year, and then they are being sold when they are needed. There are certain items, say your firecrackers. Now, during some occasions you need it, but companies which are manufacturing, they are manufacturing throughout the year. Of course, for certain period their production may be high, for certain other period production may be low. Say ice. Now, in summer months you need much greater quantity of ice, but in winter months the requirement may be low. Now, if you are producing any item which is of a seasonal nature, then there is a scope that you can even out and you can produce it for a longer period. Otherwise, your machinery will be idle for a longer time, and that will not be economical, because idle capacity will add cost to your final product. Say sugarcane is available for certain period. Now, sugar mills they are running only for certain part of the year. Now, tendency should be to elongate it as much as possible, and in the rest of the period you do some activities so that people who are working, they can be utilized on those kind of things. So, with equipment, with manpower, with the space, you have to think in terms of how I can make alternative use of those kind of things, so that my product is competitive. When products are of a seasonal demand, then they are required only for certain period of time, and seasonal requirement may be seasonal, or raw material supply may be seasonal. In sugar requirement is there throughout the year, but raw material available is only for certain period. And if you can replace sugarcane by something else, and which is available in rest period when sugarcane is not there, that can be another alternative. So, here one has to think in terms of how you can increase the productivity of your particular production process. Now, for forecasting the different techniques which are used are, one is the central tendency. When say past data of productions, say they are something like this, then if you find the mathematical average, you will have some central tendency. This is your central, and based on this, suppose this year is ending here, you can do your future projection. Whatever is this thing, if you project it further, then for next year, what will be the likely demand, and based on that likely demand, you can set your production target. Say January 96, this will be my production target for item A, this will be my production target for item B. So, this is known as a central tendency, and central tendency will give you the average requirement. So, there may be some variation from the actual requirement, but that variation will be marginal, which can be tolerated. Now, another method of forecasting is last uses. Every week, in the end of the week, whatever is required, that you try to set the target for next. Then next week, like that, you keep on proceeding. So, whatever incremental is taking place, you are taking care of that kind of thing. Then third method is moving average.
So what is the last usage?
Last uses, for a week, suppose in a week you are producing the goods and you are consuming the raw material, and over a week you are observing, and there is some increase, and if there is an increase, then at the end of week you will be utilizing the maximum amount. So, that you set as an initial target for coming year, first month, and then some increase is there, you allow that kind of a increase, and at the end of next week again you see the last usage, and that you set as an initial requirement for the next week, and like that you proceed. Now, the third technique which is listed here is moving average. And in moving average, we take a particular period, maybe 1 week, maybe 10 days, maybe 3 days, maybe 6 months, it all depends from unit to unit and product to product. So, over that period, we try to find out what is the average requirement, and like that, we work out the requirement, and based on that we project it for the future. So, here there is a detailed study on these areas, and one has to go deep into it, how to calculate and all that thing, and these days even computer programs are available, in which if you feed your present data, then based on your present data and whatever method you want to use it, they can give your future requirements, and once you have your future requirements, you can set your production targets. So, some of the tools are available which can be utilized for setting the targets, production target in future.
So viewers, in the first part of the film on production planning and control, we learn production procedures and pre-planning for quality production. This part explained the factors based on routing, estimating, scheduling, loading, dispatching, and also continued to forecast for control tendency, last usage, moving usage, etc. In the next part of the film, we will deal with control, which carries material control, batch control, and production control. Lastly, we will note the types of production control. Till then, thank you and goodbye.